everyone, this is Newman here with 910 Airgun Tuning and Repairs. Today we are going over the FX Dreamline trigger assembly. A little bit of tuning, more so just how the trigger works. I've done two other videos. I've done the crown first and the impact, now I'm doing the Dreamline. So in any case, I've got an FX Dream Classic action here. You can tell from this safety, it's got the brass bar safety with the safety lever rather than the AR style safety. That doesn't really have any effect on the trigger so much, just the safety acts a little bit differently. You'd have to set the safety screw a little bit differently for that. Also, the classic action has this hammer adjuster on it, but again, that doesn't affect the trigger whatsoever. So, for the first part, we're going to go over how the trigger is disassembled, and then the different parts of the trigger, and then how it's reassembled. And then after that, I'll go through I'll try and make this tuning really fast. Alright, so now to start with the disassembly, we need a 1.5mm Allen to take out the set screws. There's 4 of them for the Dream Classic. There might be there's 5 for the DreamPup because you have an L bracket here. But in any case, there's only 4 for the other models. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just gonna take those off real fast. Be real careful when you're taking these off. As you can tell, they're very, very small. There you go, right there. Very small. Oop. Good thing I caught it. Caught it already. I'll set that right up there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of these and I'll jump right back. Okay, so we're back now. We've got the 4 screws removed, the 4 set screws. We had to remove those 4 set screws because the pins will only come out of that side. There's 4 pins. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So again, we're going to take our 1.5mm, or you can take an equivalent size punch if you would like. And we're going to start with the first stage pin, which is this one right here, the very forward one facing the muzzle. So you just go ahead and push that through. There's your first pin. And then you're going to go for the next screw back. And it basically goes in order. You go from muzzle to the stock, I guess you could call it, from the front to the back of the gun whenever you're taking out these pins. So the next one is this one right here, the edge of the action. What that does, that holds in your trigger wheel. So as you punch it through, be sure to hold down your trigger assembly. And it's going to be a little tough. You go ahead and get out, there we go. Because there is spring tension on this. There you go. There's your trigger. And the other pin. And then you've got your third pin right here. This is what prevents the sear from falling down. And then for this last one, for the trigger sear, we're going to turn the action right side up. Push the pin through, and the sear will fall out. So there's your last pin. And there is your trigger sear. Put that all right here. See, the action has no trigger in it now, no trigger components. You've got your safety still, but that's a different part. So now we're going to set this to the side and we're going to get to the trigger. Okay, so now we're going to go over the explanation of the different parts of the trigger. As we've already mentioned, we've got the trigger sear here. The hammer, whenever the gun is cocked, the hammer is pulled back, comes over this ledge and gets caught right there. Whenever it is pulled back, it pushes this down against the spring, and that's what activates the trigger wheel to be caught against the edge. The next, in succession of going down the trigger base, we're going to start from the front to the back. We've got the first stage screw. This screw right here determines how much travel is in your first stage, which is the first pull of the trigger before it hits the second stage. So the farther you have it in, the less travel you'll have. The farther you have it out, the more travel there'll be. Alright, so the next one is your trigger wheel. As mentioned before, this is what activates with the trigger sear. Whenever it's shaped like this, a lot of people like to call it Pac-Man because it looks like Pac-Man, especially if you hold it like that. So in any case, it's shaped like this because whenever the gun is cocked, the trigger sear is riding on top here, and whenever you pull the trigger down, this is the slot where the edge of the trigger sear right here, it falls into place. Every single time. That's how it happens every time. If the gun won't fire, it's because the trigger sear will not come off of the top right here. It won't come off the top of your trigger wheel. This normally requires a little bit of polishing or something of that matter to fix. Alright, then going down the line, you've got your trigger post. You get your trigger post with your trigger blade. This is a 1.27, or it's a 2mm Allen. It takes a 1.27mm Allen key to remove or adjust. This is actually a 2mm Allen. And here's your, I guess you call it your first stage spring, but it's really just your trigger spring at this point. It doesn't act the same way as the impact one does. This is actually a necessary function of the rifle, to where this post of the trigger sear sits inside just like that, so that whenever this gets pressed down, it's creating spring tension on the trigger. And that's what makes it pop out for your first stage. It'll make the trigger swing out this way. That brings this in contact with the top, so the trigger sits about like that, so that whenever you go to pull your trigger, this gets compressed, and then this it pushes, because this is riding on a pin right there, so this is pushed down, the front side is pushed into the slot of the trigger wheel. Your next screw is your second stage. With this determines how much second stage play. It's a screw with a spring and ball bearing into it. That ball bearing right there is spring activated, so that whenever you are pulling through and you hit it, you can feel the weight, and then you still have to keep going. It isn't just one solid pull. That's what gives you your second stage. Your last screw here, this is your safety screw. This is what determines whether you have a safety or not on your rifle. If this is too far out, you will not have a safety. If you have this too far in, you will only be able to have safe, and you will not be able to fire the rifle, no matter what the setting is on the actual safety itself. And the same for the other. If it's too far out, then you'll always be on fire. You'll never have a safety, no matter what the setting is. So you gotta have this in the right balance with the position of the safety. Alright, so there's trigger. There's the explanation of the trigger. Now we're going to put it back into the rifle, and we're going to figure out how to get it properly tuned for you. Alright, so now we're going to do the installation of the trigger back into the trigger block. So the very first thing you have to do, get your trigger sear back in. I'm go ahead and move these parts to the side. We only need one pin right now. So we need to get the trigger sear aligned. Try to bring this closer. In between these two, I guess you could call it like a pinch. So in any case, we're going to take a pair of forceps or needle nose pliers and grab the tip, the front tip of the trigger sear, just like that. Go ahead and clamp onto it, or if you haven't, if you just have a needle nose plier, then you'll just have to hold on to it. Go ahead and get your pin started. You want this to be sticking kind of more vertically, kind of like that. Then you gotta put it in there. Try to line up the hole. Push through the pin. Let's see, I missed it the first time. So we're gonna get our punch here. It's a 1/16 punch. fits perfectly. You can also use a 1.5mm punch if you have metric punches. So you've got your pin lined up. You got your trigger sear again. You gotta place it like that, and then you gotta watch in here as you're pushing the pin through. Try to line up with the hole in the sear, and looks like I got it. Yep. Alright. So again, I'm gonna take my punch, go ahead and push the pin all the way through. And while we're doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the next pin that goes underneath the sear to make sure the sear doesn't fall down. Go ahead and make sure that pin's in all the way. And while we got these in, I'm going to go ahead and install them, or install the set screws behind the pin so that the pins do not fall out. When you're tightening these, you don't have to be very tight. You just finger tight. They're not going to back out, but you don't want them loose. You don't want them to fall out. Alright, so the next one is going to be the trigger wheel pin, I guess you could call it. It's the one that holds the actual trigger mechanism onto the block. So with this, you have to line the spring up with the back of the trigger sear. The back of the trigger sear right here. You have to line that up with, you get the spring on there, and then push the pin through the slot here, through the hole, through the trigger wheel hole. So, go ahead and line that up. Go ahead and slide in your trigger wheel, try to get lined up, estimated, and start pushing on your pin. I'll have to play around with it a little bit, and it looks like I already found it. It's going to be a little difficult once you get it in. Just tap on the pin a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and punch it on through. There we go. Now it's in there. Now I can go ahead and take the set screw and attach that. It's good and snug, and then you can just push through your last pin right there. There's not going to be any tension on it. That's just there's only tension on it when your trigger is actually engaged. Alright, so we got all of our screws nice and snug now. The trigger is installed. It's not going anywhere. Everything's in place. And here's just a test. It cocks. It's on safe. And then it can fire. So there we go. Now we're going to go on to the actual tuning part. Okay, so now we're going to do the tuning of the actual trigger itself. I don't have a trigger weight gauge today, so we're not going to be doing exact weights, but what we will be doing is going to see the minimum and maximum of each adjustment. So we need two different Allens. We need a 1.5mm right here, and we need the 2mm Allen right here. So the first off is the first stage screw. That's this screw right here. We're going to use a 1.5mm Allen for that. We're going to adjust it all the way in. These screws will have a Loctite on them beforehand, so be sure to heat these up or else you will most likely strip them out. You might also still, even after heating them up, might have to play with them a little bit before they get loose. So we're just going to go as far in. We're going to leave two threads sticking out. Surprised the gun even cocked. But yeah, it won't fire now. Yeah. Oh, there you go. It did fire. See how little travel that is? I mean, that's pretty much just barely touching and then going. So let's see if we can actually take that in some more. We're going to go ahead and use the short end of the L. That Loctite's pretty tight. Looks like it's green Loctite. It's supposed to be low strength, but there's a lot of it. So there we go. The gun won't even cock now, because you can see the trigger is actually technically already engaged. Now, let's see what happens if we take it too far out. I'm going to skip through this real fast and just come back with the screw already backed out. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got the screw completely backed out. It's not sticking out of the trigger base at all. So whenever I go to cock it, I'm going to hold the trigger down here just in case. It's going to have a lot of first stage. And actually, the way they've got this designed, you can't over adjust it really. I mean, you can take out all the first stage to where it comes down really far, and this is probably hitting your trigger guard down here. But you can't over travel your first stage. I mean, it can be quite obnoxious amount of pull, but it can't over travel because it's going to stop itself on the ledge here. Alright, so we're going to adjust this back to a desirable level. Actually, going to pull it out some. And there you go. There's a good amount of first stage. You got your first pull, and then your second pull. So, okay, so now we're going to tune the second stage right here. I mean, yeah, you know what the second stage is. Whenever you're pulling it here, so when you have the gun cocked, you pull through the second stage, or you pull through the first stage, and then your second stage is what goes off. Alright, so right now it's in good alignment. It's working properly. If you back it too far out, you'll lose this second stage, per se. Lose it, as in you only have a one stage trigger. So there you go. It's backed out too far, the ball's not even showing. As you're pulling through, it never stops. It just goes all the way through. Oh, I messed with the safety. There you go. Then if you turn it too far in, you won't be able to pull the trigger. So you can cock it, but then no matter what your safety's on, it's not going to pull no matter what. It's not able to release the sear. So what you do is you just back it off a little bit. Almost. See, it's still fully compressed, but it didn't go down. It didn't release the sear. So we need to come off a little bit more. About another quarter turn, and there you go. There you go, right there. Alright, so now onto the safety. We've got the safety screw right here. It uses a 1.5mm Allen key. You can either have it too far out and you won't have any safety, or you can have it too far in and the trigger won't pull, it won't shoot. So let's go ahead and pull it out. We got the 1.5. Pull it out quite a bit. There we go. Yeah, it's not even poking through now. So I'll put it on safe. It fires. Put it on safe over here. It fires. I put it on fire. It fires. Put it all the way over here. It still fires. It'll fire anywhere. Face it straight down. It's still going to fire. So that shows you right there that there's no safety left. Go ahead and disengage that. Now we're going to turn it in. I'll be right back with it all the way turned in. So here we go. I've got it caught back. I've got the screw in really far, so it fires right there. If you turn it to safe, it won't fire. So I can turn it in a little bit more. I'm gonna have it on safe though as I turn it in. See if I can get it in there. There we go. There you go, it's pretty much bombed out, and yeah, that's not going anywhere. So you see it's even on fire now. It's stuck inside it's getting stuck inside the safety. I guess it's still there, it's still firing on fire, but it's very grindy and it's getting stuck. And the safety has to be in perfect alignment in order to get the fire. Yeah, it's not even firing now. If I just keep on going further and further in, it's definitely not going to fire at all. Yeah. So yeah, I've got it screwed all the way in now. As you can see, you can't shoot it. It's just grindy. You can't even switch it off of fire because it's actually pushed into the safety lever now. So yeah, you don't ever want this to happen. So you're just going to take your 1.5, set it back to about where it was before, about midway, about like that. Let's see, it's still a little off. Nope, that was good actually. Alright, so there's a quick tuning tutorial. We went through the first stage, the second stage, and the safety. You can't adjust the trigger post or anything like that. If you want to, you can loosen the little tiny screw to the trigger blade that uses the 1.27mm Allen. And that can help you rotate it, move it up and down the post according to your finger, how you like to pull the trigger. But besides that, yeah, that's the only adjustment with the trigger. You got your first stage, your second stage, and then you've got your safety. You always want to make sure your safety is in proper alignment, and then you need your first and second stage to be working right in order to pull the trigger. You can have it only as a single stage if you'd like. You just need to back out the second stage screw, and then you only have a single stage trigger. Most people like that second stage, so I would recommend keeping that in. There you go. If you have any questions, drop in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to answer. And happy shooting!